Today, we're going to be taking a deeper dive into understanding rational numbers, and our goal and focus for today is to learn how to represent, compare, and interpret negative numbers and absolute value in a real-world context. So, what are rational numbers, anyways? Essentially, a rational number is any number that can be written in the form of a fraction. And as always, as we learn new information, we want to make sure we're connecting it to information that we already know. So, all the way back to first grade is when we're introduced to rational numbers with whole numbers. We're adding and subtracting whole numbers. Third grade is when we are introduced to fractions, and it's this idea that you can have a quantity that represents part of a whole amount. Fourth grade is when we first start using the number line in relation to fractions and decimals. We see that all fractions are decimals, just written in different form. They both represent division, and they can live on the number line in between whole numbers. Fifth grade, we were really working with fractions with all four of the operations. And sixth grade is a big year because this is when we first begin to understand negative numbers and what they look like in the real world. So we are extending our understanding about numbers to include those negative numbers, where they're at on the number line, and then what type of quantities they represent in real life application, like thinking about debt, temperature, and elevation. So another key idea that we need to talk about when we are dealing with negative numbers is absolute value. And absolute value is measuring the distance from zero on a number line. So the really big idea that we want to remember about absolute value is that it's distance. Now, I like to run, I like to exercise, I like to go for a jog to exercise. And so the other day I ran 3 miles. Now, do you ever hear someone say, "Oh, yesterday I ran -3 miles"? No, because you can't travel or you can't measure a negative distance. All distance is measured in a positive number. Now, I also enjoy swimming. I have 4 kids and we love to go to the pool during the summer. And if I throw my diving toy into the 6 feet deep of the pool, right, my diving toy goes down 6 feet, right, below the surface level. We could say it goes down -6 feet all the way down to the bottom if I'm starting at 0, but the distance that I travel is still 6 feet. Even though I'm swimming below the water, right, the distance is always positive. So with absolute value, because we're measuring distance, our distance is always positive. And today we're going to make sense of these negative numbers, both negative numbers and absolute value, in a real world context. So let's get into it. All right, we're going to start by working with the negative numbers. We're going to identify, compare, and order them. So let's start here with number 2. We're going to plot the following numbers on the number line. So plotting the following numbers on the number line, I always like to start right at 0. So we see we have -1. So anything that's negative is going to be to the left of 0. Let me switch to my pen here real fast. So starting at 0, I'm going to go to the left 1 space, and there I have -1. So anything to the left of 0 is for a negative number, and then if we move to the right of 0, it's going to be a positive number. So I always like to start right at 0 and then think if it's positive, I'm going to the right. So there's three spaces to the right. 0's right in the center. -4, I'm going to go 4 spaces to the left at -4. And then we have 5. I have 5 spaces to the right for 5. And there are my points. Now we are going to list the numbers in order from least to greatest. And again, when working with the negative numbers, a number line is our best friend, especially when you have negative and positive. So I'm going to draw my quick own little number line right here. Negative means I'm going to the left of 0, and then, whoops, get that arrow in there. And then going to the right means I'm talking about a positive number. So I start with 0 in the middle. -7 is going to be 7 spaces to the left. So here I have -7. I plot my point. Now I'm going to look at number 2, 2 spaces to the right. 4, 2 more spaces gives me 4. Now -4, I start at 0, 3, 4 spaces to the left, -4, and then 1 is 1 space to the right. Now I can see by just clearly looking at my number line what the order is. We have -7, -4, 1, 2, and 4. Same order as how we see them on the number line. Now we are comparing positive and negative numbers using greater than, less than, or equal to. So we make our number line, negative to the left, positive to the right, and we have -6. So starting from 0, I'm going to go 6 spaces to the left. 4, 5, 6. There's -6. 3 more spaces will get me to -9. Okay. Now, whatever number is closest to 0 is my larger number. So -6 is greater than -9. Let's look at number 11. We have 2 compared to -2. So again, I'm going to draw my number line, positive to the right, negative to the left. So +2 is 2 spaces to the right of 0, and -2 is 2 spaces to the left of 0. And +2 is greater. So the further you are to the right on the number line, the greater the value you have. Now we're going to circle which number is closer to 0. So let's start with number 16. We have 2 or -4. So which one's closer to 0? We're going to want to make our number line. So with 2, we know it's going to be a positive number. I have 0 in the middle of my number line. Positive means I go to the right, negative to the left. So 2 spaces to the right, and then 4 spaces to the left gets me at -4. Which one's closer to 0? 2. Now we're going to look at absolute value, and we're going to be understanding and applying absolute value. So remember, absolute value is about distance, and we're looking at -5 and 3 on the number line. So let's start at 0, and we're going to plot our points like we just practiced. So we know that -5 is to the left of 0, and then 3 is 3 spaces to the right. Now I'm counting my distance in between 5, 6, 7, 8. So the distance between -5 and 3 is 8. All right, now let's look at number 2. Again, the distance between -2 and 4 on a number line. So we're going to plot the point. -2 is going to be 2 spaces to the left of 0. And then 4, we're going to be 4 spaces to the right. Now I want to know the distance between the two. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 spaces between -2 and 4. So the distance is 6 on the number line. Okay, let's look at number 4. We're finding the absolute value, and the absolute value of -9 is 9. It's always positive, and here's why. Let's look at the number line. So from 0, I need to go 9 spaces to the left at -9. Now I count that distance, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The distance from -9 to 0 is 9. All right, let's look at number 11 here because we're adding 2 different absolute values together. So we have the absolute value of -3 plus the absolute value of -5. So again, if we're just thinking first, absolute value is telling us we need to know what's the distance from 0. And so -3 is to the left 3 spaces. So the distance is 3. So the absolute value of -3 equals +3, and then the absolute value of -5, the distance from 0 is 5. So we are essentially just doing 3 plus 5, which gives us the total distance of 8. Okay, let's just do 2 more quick problems comparing greater than, less than, or equal to. So the absolute value of -3, okay, I know is the distance of 3 spaces versus the absolute value of -8. That's a distance of 8 spaces. So the absolute value of -8 equals 8. The absolute value of -3 equals 3. Therefore, 3 is less than 8. Or the absolute value of -3 is less than the absolute value of -8 would be our answer. And let's do one more like this. So the absolute value of -5, the distance from -5, this equals +5 because it's 5 spaces to the left of 0, and then 2 is only 2 spaces to the left of 0. So the absolute value of -5 is greater than the absolute value of 2 because the absolute value of -5 equals 5 and the absolute value of 2 equals 2. And we know that 5 is greater than 2. We are working on our application problems, aka our power-up problems. So we're going to solve each of these word problems. Again, we're thinking just about the context of understanding negative numbers and then also understanding absolute value, how it's measuring the distance from zero. So weather watch, the temperature in Anchorage, Alaska was negative 12 degrees Fahrenheit in the morning and then rose to 3 degrees by the afternoon. How many degrees did the temperature increase total from the morning to the afternoon? So we're thinking about what was the overall amount of change, and this is a great opportunity for us to use our best friend, the number line. And with temperature, I'm going to make a vertical number line. So at 0, I know negative 12 degrees is 12 below 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So here's negative 12. And this was in the morning. By the afternoon, the temperature rose all the way back up to 0 degrees and ended at 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Nice and chilly still. So from 12 to 3, the total distance on my number line to get from negative 12 to 0 is 12. And then from 0 to 3 is 3. So 12 plus 3 gives us a total distance of 15-degree change. All right, let's do one more problem, bank account. So we want to make sense of this information. Again, thinking about absolute value and distance from 0. So Jordan withdrew $40 from his bank account and then he spent $60 the next day. What is the overall change in the account balance? So when we think of withdrawing money, it's like taking away $40, right? And then he also spent $60. Okay, so it's a loss of $40 and it's a loss of $60. And this is why we can think of absolute value, because the question is not asking how much money is in his account. It's asking what's the overall change of the account balance. And so the change was 40 the first time, and then this next time 60. And so we are simply going to add 40 plus 60, and the overall change in the account balance is $100. It's not saying he has $100. It's after he spent $40 or $60 and after he withdrew $40, the overall change is $100. And now we can see that application of absolute value. Today we made sense of negative numbers and absolute value, and we did that by first locating them on the number line. The number line is our best friend when we're dealing with negative numbers and absolute value. We were able to compare and order our negative numbers by using the number line, and then we also used the number line to help us measure the distance from 0 when thinking about absolute value. We ended by going over a few application problems of what this looks like in a real-world context. Want to learn more about rational numbers? Check out these 2 videos on decimal operations and converting fractions to decimals. And hey, if you're looking for more practice problems and structured lessons, I've got a complete 6th grade math workbook with tons of problems and explanations. Grab it at theblazehaven.com. The link is in the description. Subscribe for more tutorials, and I'll see you next time.